There's an understandable amount of celebration going on after the elections on November the 5th in the States. Across the country, in a number of places, there were a number of local elections going on for sort of mayor elections, gubernatorial elections and other things. And there was a very strong showing for Democrats and a lot of celebration amongst Democrats in defeating Republicans and people basically on Trump's side. What is most important, though, I think, at this time, is not just to look at the big headlines, but is to actually drill down on some of the specific data that will give us a real sense of what's actually happening in the country. You see, because a lot of the elections were conducted in traditionally democratic areas, like, for example, California, like New York, where Zoran Mamdani had that really impressive victory. Other places that Kamala Harris won, like Virginia and other places like that. The truth is that these are democratic-leaning areas anyway. Certainly in presidential elections, that's been the case. So what we want to do is actually to look at the counties on a county-by-county basis. That will give you a sense of what's really going on, where the wind is actually blowing right now. And that's what I'm going to do very briefly in this video. Now, there are two kinds of counties that we want to really zero in on to get a proper analysis of what happened on election night. First of all, the bellwether counties, counties that tend to move with the tide, whichever direction public opinion is flowing. So, in years when the Republicans are running strongly, they tend to return Republican candidates, and in years when the Democrats are running strongly, they tend to run Democratic candidates. So, where are those bellwether counties going? These are different from the states. Obviously, each state is composed of a whole multitude of counties, but the county level itself is where we get the real evidence. And so, the bellwether counties are the first ones to look out for. The other thing we want to do is actually look at counties where there has been a sort of long-term trend in one direction. So counties, for example, that have been Republican for decades and decades, have any of those flipped across to Democrats? That will give us a real sense of the strength of the tide. So first of all, we want to get a sense of the direction of the tide, which way is it headed. Second is we want to get a sense of the strength of the tide, as if it is headed towards the Democrats, then how far is it going? How strong is this tide? And for all of this, we turn to our amazing friends at the Bulwark, one of my favorite channels, people who are conservative originally. They come from the Republican Party, yet they are the ones who said no. They are literally the bulwarks. They are the ones who stood up to Trump and said that they're not going to go along with that, and they're doing everything in their power to try to defeat him at every level. They have been doing for years now. So their analysis is often great. And here are some clips about key counties that they have been looking at during this election cycle.
Loudoun County is the county in Virginia that when it came in on election night 2024, we all said, shit. Like, this is not.
I was like, was that a mistake? I remember we're texting underneath. I was like,
I was asking my team, they're running me pieces of paper.
Counting here?
And I was like, this can't be right. And that was really the beginning of the end, was Loudoun County. She's destroying in Loudoun County.
Spotsylvania County has not been won by a Republican in decades. Trump won it by, I think, 16.
Sorry, you mean hasn't been won by a Democrat in decades?
Excuse me, thank you. It hasn't been won by a Democrat in decades. My apologies. Trump won by 17 in 2016. For example, Youngkin won by 20 in 2021. Spanberger's won it by 2 tonight. And so, I think that tells you a lot.
So we see here that bellwethers like Loudoun County, which give you a rough idea of where the tide is turning, which way the wind is actually blowing, went clearly to the Democrats this time. So clearly that shows that the direction of the kind of political winds is in the Democrats' favor. That is very clear. Now, then you have other counties like Spotsylvania, which Tim Miller mentioned, and that is a county that, as he said, hasn't been in Democratic hands for decades. But that also flipped across to the Democrats. So this tells us that not only is the tide in the direction of Democrats, but it's very strongly in the direction of Democrats. And one other thing to notice here, that we're talking about counties in Virginia. Virginia is where a lot of people live who work for the federal government, who have been laid off or furloughed or sort of, had to pause work at the moment because of the government shutdown. And even there, where there's lots of government employees who are harmed by the government shutdown, it is they who are voting against Trump and against Republicans. So the blame for the shutdown is clearly going by the people who are most affected by it towards the Republicans. So this is all positive, really. It really shows that there's a strong wind of change anti-Trump on the ground, across the board, in key parts of the country where Trump was once popular. The downside to this is that because of the way the US elections are held, it gives Trump and his cabal a key insight into where things are headed. Because the big election is next year, the full midterms are next year, where all the House seats come up and a big chunk of the Senate comes up, and so both the key congressional houses could change hands. This means that Trump already is tipped off to the fact that the winds are flowing strongly against him. That means that he's much more likely now to act in an unconstitutional way, to in some way block or rig the vote to prevent that happening, because, as I've said before, it's an existential threat to him if Congress changes hands. The only way he can get away with doing all the clearly illegal things he's doing, all the unconstitutional things he's doing on a regular basis now, is by having a compliant Congress who are basically completely asleep at the wheel and who have ceded all power and authority to him and to the White House. So it is an existential threat to him if that changes hands and goes back into Democratic control. And so he will do everything in his power to try to prevent that happening. Unfortunately, now he knows that's the only way he can prevent that calamity of Democratic control coming about, by doing something unconstitutionally. So on the one hand, this is indeed a time of celebration, that things have gone well, things are moving in the direction, the public is on board. But on the other hand, it's also a time to brace ourselves for what comes next from Trump and his machine. What we then need to do is make sure that when he does do what he's inevitably going to try to do and stop a fair and legitimate election going ahead, that the public are ready to really come out into the streets, demonstrate, and prevent that from taking hold. That, unfortunately, is a crescendo towards which this is now all building. I hope you like my video. As a psychiatrist who loves politics and economics and philosophy, I love to make videos like this, and you can really help promote this video to other people and get it on your feed more by liking and commenting and subscribing to the video as well. We have a wonderful community of people here who comment and support each other through this very traumatic period of world history that we're going through right now. I also hope you consider becoming a subscriber to the channel and also subscribing to my e-newsletter. There's a link in the description, and that way we can stay in touch outside the channel, so you can keep abreast of all of the content that I'm making on an ongoing basis. The latest of which actually is my latest book called We the People. Very, very proud of this book. It's actually a novel, a fiction book written by myself and the famous award-winning author T.J. McGregor. Together we wrote a book about what the future might look like. Bit of a dystopian novel, but what might happen if autocracy goes to its next stage, AI predicting the potential end of humanity. I actually made a video about that, it really happened. And how things might pan out in this dystopian world, and actually how a band of committed, passionate, progressive people managed to change the trajectory, and not in the way that you think. It's not just by running a candidate and opposing the autocrat, but actually by deepening the democracy that we have and engaging in a real participatory form of democracy that sort of shifts the needle and gets us back to basics and helps us sort of rebuild our democracy. And that's within the context of a really compelling, gripping story, a bunch of fascinating characters, and I assure you, you will not be able to sort of stop turning the page until you get to the end of the book. That's what all the reviewers have said so far. Lots of people love it, and I hope you can get it. You can get it on Amazon, any of the global Amazon bookstores out there. Please do order your copy of We the People. Just put We the People Russell Razak and you'll be able to find it inside Amazon as well. Also, I hope you consider becoming a member of the channel. You can subscribe to a couple of different membership levels. all members of the channel also get some free ebooks that I produce once a month. You can buy those ebooks too from russellsbooks.com. That's russellsbooks.com, and every month I produce a new ebook on that channel, which is really about, these are the non-fiction books I produce with my team, which is really about how to learn about the world around us and the psychologies of the people who govern us, but also how to learn about ourselves, deepen our own self-awareness in a way that helps us navigate this difficult world we're in right now. So those are sort of self-help books that are produced every month, and if you're a member of the channel, you get a sort of 100% discount on those books every month. Otherwise, you can go to russellsbooks.com, as I say, and buy them anytime you like. I really hope you can become a part of this community, as I say. So this sort of supportive community, validating and helping each other, is really worth being a part of, and I hope you can join us as we all join forces to create a better tomorrow together. Thank you.